We are back with writing tips. So, we're going to talk about narrative today. Where do you get your story ideas? My name is Sean Fleming, and I'm going to go through some story ideas with you. So, the first thing I want you to think about is think about your house. I found a plan for a house, so you can see the library, the living room, the enclosed porch. My house doesn't have a library or an enclosed porch, but it does have a living room and a dining room. I'll show you my house in a moment. So I want you to take a moment and draw your house. So go ahead and stop the video and draw your house bird's eye view, kind of like this picture. Now that you've drawn your house, I want you to think about the different areas of your house. Go through your house and think about perhaps the kitchen. Think of things that have happened in the kitchen, perhaps baking cookies. I remember baking cookies with my mom, and the first time that she baked cookies with me. You might think of the bedroom. I remember a time when my aunt was babysitting me, and she came up to the bedroom, and she told some ghost story, and I was very scared. I loved it. You might think about the living room. Think of a problem that might have happened in the living room. Maybe you broke a lamp. Maybe something else interesting happened. Perhaps in the bathroom. Do you remember a time you got sick? When you were throwing up? Here's a picture of my house. You can see the dining room and the kitchen and the bathroom on the first floor. The other side, I didn't label it, was the living room. There was a sofa and a piano, and I've labeled some places where stories happened. Going back to the dining room, studying for tests at the dining room table. I remember making lunches with Lucifer. Lucifer was my cat, and it was a challenge. Over by the piano, I remember playing piano all alone, except I wasn't alone. In the living room, I remember learning to play guitar. I remember wrestling with my brother. I remember the fireplace. There was a TV room above the garage. I didn't know how to draw that, so I just kind of drew it behind the garage. And we would play video games up there sometimes. And in the backyard, I remember raking some leaves. All things that I could draw ideas from, that I could think of stories from. So go ahead, look at your house and try to think of some house ideas. Now I'd like you to think about your neighborhood. You could draw your neighborhood. So go ahead and take a moment and draw your neighborhood. You might include the neighbor's house, the supermarket. Is your school nearby? No? Well, what is nearby? Draw the things that are nearby to you. Places that you pass by, places that you might have a story about. If it's not the neighborhood where you live now, it might be the neighborhood where you used to live. Now that you've drawn your neighborhood, think of stories that might have happened. Maybe there was a sleepover at David's house. Maybe you snuck out. Don't do that. Maybe you watched a movie and you got scared. How about the supermarket? I remember a time that my mom's keys got locked in the car, and I helped her get them out. How about at the library? Anything ever happen at the library for you? I remember I found a new series of books at the library. Perhaps at the park. My brother helped me learn to do a handstand. So we're going to go through and try to think of some stories that happened in your neighborhood. Here is my neighborhood. There's an area where not much happened. But if you look down here at Lyndhurst Park, I used to play soccer there. Dave lived down here in the corner. I used to go canoeing down by the lake. Got in a big old bike accident going down the 48th Street hill. I used to deliver papers. And there on Girard, there was a fire once. There's a good story there. The bakery. Some good stories from the bakery. And I used to walk up to John's house over by the creek. So go ahead and label your neighborhood where some stories happened. Try to think of problems and solutions. Now we're on to people. Who are the people in your life? For me, some people in my life as I was growing up were my mom and my dad, my brother Chris, my friend Rob. Of course, Grandma was also there as I was growing up too. After I draw this web of people, I'm going to start thinking about stories. Now, some of these stories might repeat from previous stories. For example, I remember baking cookies with my mom. But there are other things I remember about Mom. There was a time when she took me to my piano lessons, in her orange VW Bug. I've got some stories about that. Oh, and that story about Rob, it was when we rode down the 48th Street hill. So label some people and think of stories, things that happened with them. Take a moment and do that now. And now we're on to places. Have you traveled the world? Have you traveled in your country? Perhaps around your neighborhood? Think of some places where different things have happened. Have you moved? Maybe you moved to a new place. Where is home for you? Have you gone camping? Have you gone to the beach? Have you gone to a cabin? Have you gotten lost somewhere? Have you gone on vacation? Have you tried ordering food in a new language? Have you tried a new activity that you had never tried before? Learned something new? I remember going to Grandma's house. I made a video of my grandmother. She was telling a story about when she was growing up. And there was a park near my house. I got in a fight with some friends. That's a good story I could tell. I also remember at the library, I used to drink Mountain Dew, and some Mountain Dew got spilled on a computer. I could tell about that story. And going to the theater, going to the mall, I remember sneaking into the theater. I remember going shopping for a shirt, and I found a new shirt at the mall. It wasn't that easy, but that's what makes a good story. So think of some places you've been, and maybe some stories that have happened there. Go ahead. Now, personal narrative or fiction? Well, if it's a personal narrative, the personal narrative will tell the story of how you solved a problem. That's you. You are the protagonist. You are the main character. Well, if it's fiction, you can take your personal story and you can change the place. You could change the time. You could change the gender. You could change the name. And that could become fiction. Many authors do this. They take personal stories and they change some of the details and they make it a fiction story. So, have your character solve the problem. Add magic. Add fantasy. Add tension. Add some mystery. You're going to have a great story.